I'm glad you brought up the LeVar thing. I was definitely going to, but rather than talk more about that episode, I will use my remaining time to share the message from the back of that signed LeVar photo, if you will indulge me. I truly believe that our thoughts influence what we experience in life. Do yourself a favor and spend at least one moment today thinking of our world as a safe, healthy, and wonderful place to be. In the light, LeVar. Greetings, human beings, and welcome back to Apartment 303, a podcast for community fans. My name is Dave, and alongside my co-host Adam, we are here today for a very specific reason and with a very specific goal in mind. You've heard the bubble talk, you've seen the brackets, you've felt the hype, but today, my friends, is our official full-length kickoff to hashtag 6 seasons and a bracket. Despite being our first entry into our Bracketology quadrology, Adam, Jen, and I will be skipping straight over Season 1 for now and getting right into what I think is arguably the most challenging region of them all, and that is the Season 2 bracket. So, without further ado, let's get into Season 2. So, joining us now to help Adam and I sort through the glory of the Season 2 regional is actually the first guest we had on our podcast, so it's only fitting that you are the first repeat guest on our podcast. And even beyond that, I could not be more excited that you chose my personal season. We gave you first choice. This was when you wanted to discuss. So welcome back to the show, Jen. I know most of our listeners are probably familiar with you, but for those that may not yet be, just who are you? What are you up to?
Who am I? What a question. So I'm Jen. I host the Community Rewatch podcast, which is one of the 17 million different community podcasts that are currently in existence. But yeah, so we've been doing that for over a year now, which has been super exciting. And we are in season 3 of our discussion. We don't cover every episode of Community, which is a little bit different from a lot of the other rewatch podcasts where they go through every single episode. But as I've told people, you probably don't want to hear my thoughts on every single episode, especially the ones I don't like, because it would either be a 5-minute episode of I don't like this episode, or it would be like a 2-hour long dissection of how bad it is. So yeah, so we decided to jump around a bit, and one of our favorite things to do on our show is to introduce a chaos corner, which is basically what we call our bonus episodes. So it's our own little place to stir up some chaos and talk about things that aren't necessarily directly related to community, though it is always it is always fun to try and like come up with a connection to the show. So yeah, that's what we are and what we do, and I've had a blast doing it so far. So 1 year in, only, I don't know how much longer to go because I don't know how many episodes there are left to cover for me. But yeah, it's exciting. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, we could not be more excited to have you back, Jen. So thanks for agreeing to do this. And I know that you are well-versed in Season 2. Yes. So I'm glad to go through this with you. Now, what we're going to do, you and I will take a look. We've got the bracket printed out here, and everyone at home has access to it, too. They can follow along. We're going to go ahead and look at each of these individual matchups. Mm-hmm. We'll say our piece. Yep. I'll let you go first if you'd like. You can always defer. If we agree, then excellent. If not, Dave is going to cast the definitive vote there, the tiebreaker. He's got a lot of power in this situation.
I thought I was just going to be ejected from the podcast. Like, it's just like you have a button that's like, okay, if we don't agree.
No, the golden rule of producers. You can say whatever you like. I just reserve the right to take out what I don't like.
Yeah, Chelsea does. Hi, Chelsea, if you're listening to this. You're the best at doing that.
So before we do get into those matchups, though, I want to start with kind of the bird's eye question here. Mm-hmm. And we did an episode leading up to this where Adam and I discussed for each of the regions, which episodes weren't included in the top 16, if there are any if there were any we felt should have been, and likewise if there were any included that we felt should not have been. So I'm not going to ask you to start with everything, but in terms of season 2, before we actually get into the matchups on the bracket, were there any episodes you didn't think deserved to be in there, or any that you thought did that weren't?
Yes. So as I was looking through, I mean, everyone has their own personal favorites. There's a lot of really, really good in season 2, so it's hard sometimes to narrow down. I will say I am not, I've been very vocal about how I'm not a fan of aerodynamics of gender or Anthropology 101. So much so that I promised people that if we hit a certain amount of followers by the end of 2020, I would talk about aerodynamics of gender. So I have to come through on that promise sometime this year. And it's going to be real fun.
Hoisted by your own petard.
I know. I was like, I can't back down now. So I personally would not have, like, they're just not my favorite episodes. I do not I always skip them if I can help it. But one that's not on here that I absolutely adore is Asian Population Studies, because I think that that's one of my favorite episodes probably in season 2. And I know that it doesn't, in terms of like homage, clearing the bar kind of thing, it's not like that high level concept, but it's got some of my favorite like it's like my favorite Chang use, where he's going around making puns, but they're all just the word change. And Rich comes back, and you've got like some good Jeff Annie stuff. You've got Pierce not being completely a terrible person yet, so you got Malcolm Jamal Warner. Like, it's a fun episode all around. So I was like, oh, that's not on here, but I really enjoy that episode.
Rich makes every scene 10 times better. I feel like just for the Rich factor alone.
He brought a fun time snack. I mean, that he made in his garage. Also, Rich might be a serial killer. We don't know.
Let him finish.
I love that. That's one of my favorite, probably top 5 for sure, Winger speeches, is where he legitimately thinks up on the spot what he's going to say. And it's just so great. So good. So, yeah, that's one of my faves.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me. I wonder if we in the podcasting community have like more deep cut episodes that weren't ranked as highly that we would put in. I've got a sneaking suspicion that's the case.
That's probably true.
Yeah, but I mean, those are some of our most favorite ones, and the ones that get you specifically tend to have, for me anyway, just it hits home more than the ones that have the most broad appeal. Like that's kind of Community's deal altogether anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's get right into this first matchup here.
Let's do it.
Number 1 seed versus the number 6 seed. In the one spot, we have A Fistful of Paintballs. So the first of the two. And then that's going up against Introduction to Political Science, the 16 seed.
It goes to Fistful, without a doubt. And I say that as someone who loves Intro to Political Science, but Fistful is just genius. It's close to a flawless episode of television.
We have agreement on that. I did rewatch Intro to Poli Sci the other day just to see if I had anything to say about it. And you're right. It's really a pretty good episode.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy seeing Annie doing what she does best, when she's a competent person and then kind of like takes it too far.
Yep.
But I mean, you said it perfectly. Like A Fistful of Paintballs. Like I'm sour kind of on the paintball episodes because of what I just mentioned. Like it's like they're too popular, and I'm a community hipster. But I rewatched. I was like, no, this is excellent, just in the highest degree.
Yeah, I 100% rank that higher than Modern Warfare for me. Like Modern Warfare is
no doubt
good, but Fistful is just A+ television. So
great. Well, we can keep agreeing, or we can have some fun and disagree somewhere.
I mean,
down the line here.
I think we're going to disagree later down the line, so I'm interested to see.
Perfect.
Yeah. So with Fistful advancing, suffice to say, it will be coming up against more difficult matchups. Although I will say, for the matchups that I expect us, or for there to be unanimous agreement on, I would say Poli Sci is a good episode. For anything that's going to be unanimously defeated in the first round.
Yeah.
I do feel like it is pretty strong.
Yeah.
So
Resolved.
Moving on, well said, to the 8 and 9 matchup, which theoretically should be, the close one, the closest here in the first round. We've got Critical Film Studies going up against Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas.
I mean, it's Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas for me. There is nothing quite like reliving my childhood through a stop-motion animation Christmas special. And it's got the nostalgic factor because of that. And also it's just technically such a good episode, and story-wise a good episode, and it's got songs in it, okay? If it has songs in it, I'm ranking it higher than pretty much anything, so.
2 for 2. We agree on this one as well. I do like Critical Film Studies. Having never seen My Dinner with Andre, even to this day, I haven't seen it. So I'm sure I'm missing out a little bit on the homage. It's done well, but Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas is my favorite of all of the Christmas episodes that Community does. For all the reasons you mentioned, I find myself researching to learn more about it in July. Just because there's a lot of great history on it. So Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas for me too.
So let's break up this or delve deeper into this agreement a little bit. Instead of continuing to go down these first round matchups, let's talk about the second round matchup that we all just agreed on, which comes down to Fistful of Paintballs versus Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas.
I gave it to Fistful because I just think, I don't know. I have such a visceral reaction to that because it is such a technically well done episode. It incorporates paintball. It's a spaghetti western homage where it totally fits the genre. It's Annie centric, which is a huge thing.
She is such a badass. Oh my gosh.
She's good in that episode. And from a plot perspective, it's just a really, really interesting study on all of these characters where you have Annie as the holdout and her showdown with Pierce. You got Josh Holloway in it too. I mean, I it's really hard because I love both of them, but in the end I had to go with Fistful.
I had the winner of this matchup going to the semifinals. That's how much I like this pairing. Yeah. And I say that because on my first run through the bracket, I had it as Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas. I love that so much. Like I just mentioned, the line about who taught you to be a therapist, Michael Jackson's dad, is so funny and way too real at the same time. And it's incredible with Duncan being in the episode again. A lot to love there. But I have to agree with every word you've said about Fistful of Paintballs. And it does win out for me as well.
All right. I was a little nervous there because that was one I was hoping I wasn't going to have to be the deciding vote on, suffice to say. That one is very, very close for me. But I think I can get down with going Fistfuls on to the next round. Okay. Let's keep going.
You don't have a choice.
I was like, eventually we're going to disagree, but I'm riding this agreement wave right now.
Plenty of time, my friends, plenty of time. So let's talk about the 5-12 matchup. Famously a place for upsets in real tournaments, but here we have the 5-seed Epidemiology going up against the 12-seed Basic Rocket Science.
Epidemiology, hands down. I mean, the most it's not my favorite Halloween episode, which always surprises people, but I love it because of how genius it is. And I feel like having never watched Apollo 13, it's not Basic Rocket Science is not as exciting for me, or, I get the references, but it's just not, it doesn't connect. But watching the entire study group deal with a zombie outbreak is all set to ABBA. Come on. There's nothing more Community than that.
Epidemiology, case closed.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep. It's a clean sweep. It really sets the stage and a very high bar, I might add, for future Halloween episodes and just for future high levels of shenanigans in general, even outside of those holiday themes.
Yeah.
I can't hear ABBA today.
Yeah, I know, right?
Without thinking of that episode. I'm like, this is when Rich gets it. Oh,
without thinking of Dean's grocery list.
the Dean's list.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, so Next up, we've got the 4-seed Conspiracy Theories going up against the 13-seed Aerodynamics of Gender.
Well, considering how much I just talked about how much I hate aerodynamics of gender, it should be no surprise that Conspiracy Theories advances. But also, Conspiracy Theories is one of the best episodes of the show. Like, it's just from start to finish such a solid episode with so many amazing jokes. And you've got Jeff Annie team up. You've got Troy and Abed building a blanket fort that turns into a fort big enough for the whole school to be a part of.
Big enough for grown men.
Yeah, it's a blanket fort for men. And it's great. It's not zeroing in on one particular thing necessarily. Like, it's not doing what Community sometimes did, which is like, here's, an episode about G.I. Joe. So if you didn't watch G.I. Joe, you don't understand it. This is like a thriller spy homage. So if you've watched anything remotely close to that, or know anything about conspiracies, then you know exactly like how fun this episode is. So that is my fave.
Conspiracy Theories for me is one that the first time I watched it, I thought this is the greatest episode of television I've ever seen, because I didn't know how they would resolve it like 7 different times. As I continue to watch and rewatch it, it has gone a little bit down on my list, but certainly not far enough to fall below Aerodynamics of Gender. There are a couple redeeming things about that episode, but largely not even close.
Yeah, it's not close for me, and so I'm very interested to hear how you guys feel it matches up with epidemiology in the next round, because what we're looking at now is conspiracy theories against epidemiology.
I still advance conspiracy because I think the amount of tight writing really helps. Like, epidemiology is really funny and it's based a lot loosely on being super duper high concept, whereas conspiracy theories it does so much with so little. Like, you think about how few characters are really actually driving the action, but yet the entire episode is driven by like 4 characters. And the writing, I mean, obviously it's Chris McKenna. I love Chris McKenna. And so the writing, especially at that last scene where all the reveals are, is so great. And also it's got some of the funniest, like, I will never not like cry laughing at Academy Award winner Jim Rash, like putting a hoodie over his head going, what that this hoodie one time hoodie. Yeah, I mean, it's just got a soft spot in my heart. So conspiracy theories is moving forward.
Jim Rash crying, so not being able to figure it out, and explaining that he just teamed up with anybody who suggested it is the funniest. Again, like I said, the first time I watched it, the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Funny. So
for
funny.
me, it also advances beyond epidemiology, which again, I didn't like that episode the first time I watched it. So these are, inversely related. I like epidemiology more every time I watch it. But gosh, conspiracy theory and everything about it just hits.
Yeah.
So it advances.
All right. I would have selected that as well had I been the person speaking first, so no objections there.
A likely story.
I'm going to, yeah, that's what I would say. I want to keep this train rolling toward the final destination here, and before we tackle the bottom half of Season 2 bracket, let's talk about Fistful of Paintballs versus Conspiracy Theories.
I mean,
it's getting real now, right?
It's getting real.
It's getting real.
It's real. It was real hard. I like the bottom half of the bracket specifically made me like rethink my life choices a lot because it was like picking your favorite child. Like you're like, but I can make a case for any of these. So I love both of them, but I do not joke when I say conspiracy theories is probably like my top tier Community, and that might be a deep cut because I don't think everyone puts it like at their top tier, but for me it is. Even though Fistful is so good, it's just slightly below Conspiracy, so Conspiracy has to move on for me.
We've got our first disagreement here.
Woohoo!
I go Fistful of Paintballs on this.
That's
I did
fair.
not originally, but like I said, having rewatched it and just everything that's at stake in that episode, it's so great. Pierce's the study group hangs in balance, and as you're watching it in real time, you don't know if Pierce/Chevy is coming back, and like there's a lot of weight there. And conspiracy theories is so much fun, and it's one of those double overtime buzzer beater finishes.
Yeah.
But for me, I do like Fistful just ever so slightly better, and because I can't have my mind wrinkled again like they did the first time when watching conspiracy theories.
I'm going to really savor this moment because I'm afraid it's going to get a lot messier when we get into the bottom half of the bracket.
Someone's leading this podcast.
It's
no matter who.
I had written a script for you guys. For the record, I did not. It's conspiracy theories for me. Conspiracy theories over Fistful of Paintballs. Fistful of Paintballs, great episode, one of the best of the season, one of the best of the series. And it's in a tough spot because it's the second paintball episode in the series, right? So they've already kind of set an expectation for a paintball episode. Mm-hmm. But it's also not the last one. It's the first part of a two-part, so it's the middle episode of the paintball episodes. And I think it does a great job even coming from a difficult position. But conspiracy theories is, one that immediately, for me is one that I look at and say, this is, it's going very far. It's going all the way. We're getting into the territory now where we're getting some really, really tough ones. I think so far this is the toughest one we've discussed, but I definitely go with conspiracy theories here. So we've got a 4 seed waiting to see what comes out of the bottom half of the bracket here. So let's kick that off with the first matchup, which is the 6 seed Cooperative Calligraphy going up against the 11 seed Anthropology 101.
Once again, I have colored all of y'all's expectations being like, oh, she's definitely going to pick Cooperative. But even if it was up against and we'll get to this, Cooperative Calligraphy is one of the most iconic, I feel like, episodes of the show. And it's not just iconic in Community, but it's iconic for bottle episodes of television. People rank it really high for a reason because it is just the tightest writing, the funniest jokes and rapid fire delivery. It's a great character study. It's you can watch the monkey take the pen. It's just all around genius. And it is the show kind of starting to push a little bit outside of its boundaries while still remaining an episode about a community college study group. It's pushing different limits, but it's still retaining some of that season 1 feel while still doing something and breaking the mold. So it's Cooperative Calligraphy.
It is Cooperative Calligraphy, and it's really difficult to get an episode that's this conceptual and to get it right on the first try. Since doing this bottle episode, Dan Harmon has done more of them on Community. He's done them on Rick and Morty. And you could argue that this was the best iteration of that concept. Mm-hmm. And again, I like Anthropology 101 fine. Anytime I get to see Betty White rap and beatbox with Troy and Abed, that's a win. But just too much from Cooperative Calligraphy. Too great of an episode.
I think it's very easy to say that Adam and I are both much higher on Anthropology 101 than you are, Jen.
Yeah.
We did a couple episodes back where we discussed all the various season openers and tried to rank them against one another. Mm-hmm. Anthropology 101 was the one that we both decided independently was our top rank there. So we're both very high on that episode, but it's not close. Cooperative Calligraphy smashes this matchup through the roof. Yeah. Even establishing, we're coming from a much higher view of that opposing matchup. It's still not close for me. So we will scoot that right on into the next round. Going down the list now, we've got... This is a real spicy one for me. Mm-hmm. We've got the number 3 seed, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, which, off the top of my head, feels a little high, but going up against the 14 seed, Mixology Certification, which, off the top of my head, feels a little low. But obviously, as we record this podcast in 2021, we can't even really go back and watch Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So
you can if you have the DVDs like I do.
Bingo.
wait, is that the one with like the big the tape in the box
it's like
and you put it into
like
the mouth
circle.
thing?
It looks like a donut, but it's flat. I literally no. I will say though, I had to buy a portable like DVD player to play into my laptop because of the fact that none of us own it. None of my roommates and I own a DVD player anymore. TVs don't come with them anymore.
So you have to weigh in first then, because you've just bragged about having special access, insider knowledge of this episode.
Information.
So show us the way, Jen. What is this matchup doing here?
So this might be the one where I get like controversy from. I'm choosing mixology certification. And the reasoning is because as funny as Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is to me, because there's so many good jokes, so many one-liners, it is essentially a bottle episode of them playing Dungeons and Dragons. There are two things that I don't necessarily care for, which is like Pierce's villainy is on heavy display, which is really hard to watch. So that plays into how I feel about it. And I have no emotional connection to Dungeons and Dragons. So that also kind of is like, oh, well, this is a really cool concept, but I don't really click with it. But mixology certification is one of the most underrated in that first kind of string of episodes. But it is one of the greatest, most emotional episodes without trying too hard. Like, Community didn't try and go over the top. But like Troy's conversation with Annie in the hallway about how he knows her, the fact that you have all of these different stories, the fact that we get some backstory into Shirley, it's all set in Troy's 21st birthday, and this concept in season 2 of Troy beginning to become a leader and a man, and basically kind of as we start to see in season 3 coming up against Jeff for that role. I love it. It's a very somber episode, but I also think it's just so brilliant. And so I'm sorry, people who like Dungeons and Dragons, but mixology certification moves on for me.
The Advanced Dungeons and Dragons episode, to me, is a lot like how fans feel about the World of Warcraft South Park episode, where the writers and the team dive into this really beloved kind of niche area of fantasy in particular, and it comes off like they really love and appreciate that particular topic. And that's the case Dan Harmon's gone on to do with Spencer Crittenden as his dungeon master. He's done Harmon Quest and a bunch of other things, and it is a much beloved episode. It is great to see the life that Charlie Kuntz brings to Real Neil with the Pipes of Steel. I'm always going to love that. It is not as good of an episode as Mixology Certification, and it's not close. So Mixology Certification moves on for me as well. So if someone's got a problem with that, they've got a problem with the whole podcast now.
Mixology Certification is a great episode. It might be the episode that I think of, reference the most that isn't jokes. Like, you know, we're constantly talking about the Red Door and L Street and all these other things from that episode, but not like in the same way we're remembering punchlines and memorable bits from other episodes. So I think that really fits with what you were saying, Jen, about how it really strikes home emotionally and in a way that's not heavy-handed. I think that's the most impressive thing about it. So for me, it's also Mixology Certification. I did really enjoy Dungeons & Dragons episode, both from the community angle and coming from someone who has been involved in that fantasy world. That was one I enjoyed, but Mixology Certification definitely for me also goes on. So we will talk more about that because it's going on, and we'll have another matchup here in just a second. But for now, let's get down to the 7-10 matchup. Paradigms of Human Memory is the 7, going up against the 10 seed, which is Intermediate Documentary Filmmaking.
I ended up giving it to Paradigms because of the fact that, like, I grew up, and I think a lot of us did, on shows that had clip shows. And so the ability for Community to do a clip show, but for it to be entirely new clips that we have never seen, makes it one of the best things. And, like, homaging Carrie, who was the Jeff and Annie fan, like her video. It's hilarious, and there's so many good clips that I wish we would have gotten full episodes of. But yeah, Paradigms, they literally, Community was like, let me take this trope, let me turn it entirely on its head, and I have to give them respect for that.
Yeah, that's a terrific episode. And again, this is a well that the Harmon produced projects have gone back to. And they did it here in season 2. They do again in season 3. They do it in Rick and Morty as well. I'm going to take a quick pot shot at that Rick and Morty episode. It's terrible. I hate it. So yeah, just that's out there. People can get mad at me about that. But it kind of bastardizes what works so well about it here in Community, and I can't forgive it for that. Intermediate documentary filmmaking is such a joy to watch. If you don't mind Pierce as the villain, then it's really a perfect episode for that. A couple of years ago, my brother got me an autographed picture of LeVar Burton for Christmas, which I've lent to Dave temporarily for safekeeping. And Troy, additionally to him saying you can't disappoint a picture, him crouched in the fetal position in the bathroom singing the Reading Rainbow is just phenomenal. And for those two outbursts of Troy, and for the scene where Jeff pretends to be Britta's dad and Britta is Jeff's dad, those three things for me put it over the edge. I go intermediate documentary filmmaking.
Wow, this is a tough spot. I do not feel the same way as I did when the last disagreement got pitched to me, that's for sure. So going back to rewatch season 2 this week, I think these are the 2 episodes that were affected the most by that. Looking at it on paper beforehand, I thought they were pretty close in my mind, off the top of my head. But going back and rewatching them really set Paradigms of Human Memory apart for me. I enjoy intermediate documentary filmmaking, but that first clip show, I think really got it right. I don't like the other one nearly as much, which we'll get to when we talk to season 3. But this is definitely a tough one, and maybe the closest one we've had to split up so far. I'm going to side with Paradigms, but I'm glad you brought up the LeVar thing. I was definitely going to, but rather than talk more about that episode, I will use my remaining time to share the message from the back of that signed LeVar photo, if you will indulge me. I truly believe that our thoughts influence what we experience in life. Do yourself a favor and spend at least one moment today thinking of our world as a safe, healthy, and wonderful place to be. In the light, LeVar.
You know what I really wanted to happen while you were reading that is like to play the music from Community season 1 where they were doing like that little like transition music.
Maybe I'll edit it in after the fact now that you bring it.
Oh,
like it just sounded like it should be like at the end of the episode as like, oh, here's the winner speech to take us home.
Hey, it came up organically, right?
It did.
So let's not languish there. Thank you for letting me share that. Let's get to the final first round matchup in season 2. The number 2 seed for a few paintballs more, going up against the 15 seed, Accounting for Lawyers.
We talked about this when we talked about A Fistful of Paintballs and for a few more on our podcast, which actually did change my opinion a little bit, not enough to change the bracket, but I do not like For a Few More as much as A Fistful. I think A Fistful is way more cohesive. It's very tight. For a Few Paintballs More was sort of like a quasi Star Wars homage, but not really, but sort of, and it was kind of a little bit messier, and I hadn't really thought about that until I rewatched it to do our episode, and then I found myself agreeing with like, ooh, it's actually like a weaker of the 2-part for sure. That being said, it still advances above Accounting for Lawyers. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about one of the funniest scenes in the whole show happens in Accounting for Lawyers, which is that chloroform scene, because I don't know that there will ever be anything funnier to me than Donald Glover like yelling.
That is an all-timer. It's almost enough to for me. It's not quite. It's almost enough to carry the whole episode. I enjoyed the rest of the episode more, but that scene will never leave me.
that scene will never, like, I will always think of Troy going, I don't know what to do. My whole brain is crying. But yeah, the episode itself is kind of a dud for me, apart from that scene and like the fact that Annie has chloroform at the very end too and is ready to chloroform Jeff if she needs to. So yeah, for a few more, despite its like, its rockiness and trying to be an homage, I think that it has a lot of fun things. It's got a lot of great stuff. It's got cameos from the Cougar Town cast. It's the way that it ends too. I like that the show let Pierce leaving actually hang in the air rather than trying to kind of almost undercut it with a joke. And so I liked that about the season 2 finale. So that one goes forward.
Yeah, the very end there of For a Few Paintballs More is really well done. And it's maybe the only time where you really genuinely can empathize with Pierce and say, oh man, like I totally get where you're coming from. Chevy is not by trade a dramatic actor, but he plays that scene perfectly.
Yeah.
That is an excellent, excellent scene. That said, I don't like that episode. I don't like it. It feels like paintball's been forced down my throat at this point. When I first watched it, I liked it, but it really falls flat for me. I do love Accounting for Lawyers for the scene that you mentioned, of course. I also really enjoy Rob Corddry. I love that the backstory of he and Annie being connected makes sense, and that and Shirley just picks up the paper when Annie writes it down. So for me, that's my biggest upset in the whole bracket. Spoiler alert. But yeah, Accounting for Lawyers, I laugh so hard at the chloroform scene that it advances for me beyond For a Few Paintballs More.
Wow.
But Dave, we already know what you think. Doesn't matter what I think.
Yeah, no, it's way, way closer than it should be for a 2 versus 15 matchup there. And you make a very, very strong case. I'm very much of the mindset that you're in for most of that episode, which is I'm over paintball now. It's the third time. The second one was literally the last episode. The transition into the Star Wars homage is sloppy at best, but the end of that episode really does land for me as well. So it's such an interesting matchup against Accounting for Lawyers, which is, the same but different in the sense that that's not an episode I love from start to finish, but that scene we've discussed really carries it for me. I don't think it quite carries it far enough to grant the upset here, although I do highly suspect that will quickly become irrelevant. So let's see if that's the case. Adam, you're going to have to be playing left-handed or without a glove or whatever metaphor you want to embrace here for this next one, because we've got A Few Paintballs More going up against Paradigms of Human Memory.
Paradigms goes forward for me because, yes, it's For a Few More has its issues, and so I think that out of the two of them, Paradigms did something completely differently successfully, whereas For a Few More did something the same but not as good as the episode before it. So it advances.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to look at it. And then, as you mentioned before, talking about Paradigms of Human Memory, it is completely antithetical to what a clip show is anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the brilliance of doing that and saying, hey, I see what you're doing, sitcoms, and I'm going to totally subvert that. Very well done. Paradigms moves on for me too.
So even though you didn't have that as your matchup, it sounds like we're in agreement that Paradigms would advance over For a Few Paintballs More here.
In the theoretical bracket where that's the right pick, yes.
Right, in that theoretical bracket. So let's stay in this timeline on Earth 1 for the sake of this conversation. And let's talk about cooperative calligraphy even, going up against mixology certification. This one is, I don't know. I'm going to let you guys go first,
it's
but
hard.
It's tough.
It was hard. This one was the one that literally I looked at and I was like, I'm rethinking all of my life choices right now. Like, how can I choose? Because they both do something so well, but so different. And so in the end, I had to give it to the jokes and the hilarity and the iconicness of cooperative calligraphy because of the fact that like that writing is so tight throughout the whole episode, and it kind of does start this really good it's not the first time that we've thought about the study group and their differences and basically them being explosive and sort of toxic when they're together, but this is the best, I think, of those kinds of episodes. And so as much as I love mixology and as hard as it is, I am advancing cooperative calligraphy because I also love it dearly.
So in my bracket, out of every single matchup that I have, this is the hardest one to pick for me. Ugh. Because they're just incredible episodes for all of the reasons that Jen has outlined. I pick mixology certification. It is, for me, it just goes to show that Community is an excellent show in whatever it tries to do. If it wants to be the funniest show, it can. If it wants to be the highest concept show, it can do that. And if it wants to be the most heartfelt show, guess what? This episode proves that it can do that as well. Earlier, Jen had mentioned the scene where Troy and Annie are speaking in the hallway outside of her door in that dangerous neighborhood. And as soon as the first note of Greendale's Where I Belong comes on, I tear up every single time. It doesn't matter. Someone starts cutting onions, and every single time, like, I know it's coming and I can't stop it. So for me, I advance mixology, but have no beef whatsoever with calligraphy.
Samesies.
I'm glad I had my microphone muted because the howl I let out was it was painful. I was hoping not to have to chime in on this one. This one hurt me the most, for sure. From the beginning when I looked at the bracket, all the way to seeing it, come to fruition now. I would say, off the top of my head, these are both probably easily top 10 all-time episodes for the whole series for me. The first episode of Community I ever saw was Remedial Chaos Theory, which is an all-timer. I suspect we will possibly be discussing it in a Final Four discussion, or at least later when we talk about Season 3. The second episode I ever saw was Calligraphy, and it will always be a top 2 episode for me. It's an episode that you can show someone who's never seen the show and watch them giggle uncontrollably, whereas as good of an episode as Mixology Certification is, as integral as it is to the lore of the show, the tissue that connects everything, it's not that. And it is with a very, very heavy heart that I have to advance Calligraphy onto the next matchup.
Jen, I'm really sorry here, but you're going to have to join Dave's podcast. It's to be Apartment 303 with Jen.
There's no wrong answer.
I thought you would have the advantage because you already know like a lot of my opinions about Community, but I promise we did not conspire to gang up on you.
In that one, there is no wrong answer because it's just so hard.
That's true. That's fair to say.
So
in my defense, however, and we're about to get there, but so let's get to it here. We've got Calligraphy going up against Paradigms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we've all made it pretty clear where we stand, but let's go ahead and take an official vote here just for the record.
Cooperative Calligraphy advances.
I agree.
We're all leveling up so much by saying the name of that episode 1,000 times.
Well, it's so funny because, like, I didn't put the whole name of the episode in the bracket, and I was like, cooperative. There are multiple episodes in this series called Cooperative something, and I was like, yeah, that's what I meant. Calligraphy.
It's one of the most fun parts of filling out brackets is just like the names that you give.
Names
like
that you
Vandy,
give
SMU, State.
And then you're like, what episode is this?
We're going to add to it because what we're looking at now to advance as the representative from this region is Cooperative Calligraphy against conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And I may have made myself a liar less than 2 minutes after making bold statements about being torn. But what do you guys think? This is a tough one.
Y'all.
Sorry, my bracket looks way different at this point. Can you repeat the matchup again?
It's conspiracy theories, which you should have on your bracket, but it's going up against Cooperative Calligraphy, which I don't think you do if I'm keeping score at home correctly at this point.
I mean, mine is conspiracy versus cooperative, and conspiracy theories goes ahead because, as I have said, it is probably my silver medal episode of Community of all time. It might be a deep cut, but I love it, and I literally do not think I have a single qualm with that episode, which if you listen to my podcast and know me at all, you will know is a very rare thing. And as much as I do love cooperative calligraphy because I love queen of writing Megan Gans, it was just slightly edging it out, and it's so hard because they are like almost like back to back in and they're so close together in show order too. But conspiracy theories moves on.
So before you weigh in on that, Adam, what did you have going up against conspiracy theories on your bracket before we started the discussion today with Jen?
So my matchup here is Fistful of Paintballs versus Mixology certification.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Right.
That's right.
I thought,
Well,
in my memory,
You two were busy agreeing.
I
and
remember you
about
didn't
my
start concluding
opinions,
until
so-
after that part
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
bracket.
Right.
Okay, well, then never mind. How do you feel about the theoretical matchup here, conspiracy theories versus cooperative calligraphy?
Based on a first watch, I would have said conspiracy theories. Based on a rewatch value for me, it would be cooperative calligraphy. So I'll pick my answer today, which would be cooperative calligraphy. So there you have it.
All right. I'm very, very glad. I didn't want it to be a complete shutout. I'm going to go cooperative here. Like I just said, I probably made myself a liar as hard as Mixology was. These are probably two of my top 5 episodes from the whole series. This matchup for me is harder than what many of the final 4 matchups will be. But for me...
Can I jump in
cooperative
real
calligraphy-
quickly once
Nope,
you're finished?
Denied.
Okay. Perfect.
No, that's all I got to say. Cooperative calligraphy for me takes this bracket.
So as funny and high concept as cooperative calligraphy is, and as much as Abed referring to it as a bottle episode is kind of a shtick, what really gets me about that episode and what makes it so personal and heartfelt is that there are several lines of dialogue throughout the show where Abed says something that really lets you know on a visceral level that he is on the autism spectrum. And he says, it's a bottle episode, I may as well go sit, it's wall-to-wall facial expressions and emotional nuance, I may as well go sit in the corner with a bucket on my head. And you laugh when you hear it the first time, but that's such a lovely way, an authentic way to paint somebody on the autism spectrum. That's why, again, in addition to all the other stuff, it just hadn't come up yet. That's why I would pick that episode. Thanks again so much for coming on. I had a blast doing that, even more fun than I thought I would have. So thank you so much for being on.
Of course. It was so fun. It was really fun to like challenge myself and make myself think about which episodes I really liked above the others. And it was, like I said, it was hard to do in parts, but it was really fun. So thanks so much for having me.
As fun as it was, I'm even more grateful that you, came on and were in cahoots with me to gang up on Adam
It was
here.
the biggest conspiracy of all.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Very, very well said. All right, that does it for our Season 2 Regional and the very first entry of hashtag 6 Seasons in a Bracket. Congratulations to our winner, Cooperative Calligraphy. Join us in our next episode to debate the Season 3 Regional with special guest Kevin of the Advanced Community Studies podcast. We would like to take this time to thank Jen for joining us today, everybody for tuning in, and for all of your continued support. Your listens, ratings, follows, and the like are really starting to add up and help us push our content forward. As always, Apartment 303 can be found on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Anchor, or wherever you get your podcasts. For Adam and Jen, this is Dave signing off. We will see you in the next episode of Apartment 303.